Greg Cote is here on a Wednesday with us instead of a Tuesday. Yesterday was an awkward, just a weird day to do, try to do a normal Monday or Tuesday silly sports show when, all of us were feeling something super uncomfortable about what we'd witnessed on television with Damar Hamlin. And I'm hoping today, as we wrestled yesterday with sort of the ethics of what we're watching and violence as entertainment and all that stuff, it got me to thinking about the addiction and the love of this sport, because it wasn't but a month ago that I felt how delirious this room was, because for the first time this century, the Dolphins were 8-3. And what I wanted to do with you guys today in an examination of the Dolphin season, as Billy Gill, unsurprisingly, flees the room with his Tua jersey, never to be seen. We got nothing but cowardice around here.
He is a coward.
Mike Ryan won't eat the toilet paper. Chris Cote doesn't want to be here today. He hid in the shadows yesterday and now just doesn't want to be here today because he's the one who said, first of all, he left Tua for Herbert. Herbert got injured, was terrible. He came running back to Tua and said, we fall out of bed and score 30 points, and they've done nothing but lose since then.
But his dad is here.
His dad is here. But here's the other thing. Now, you don't get to escape here unscathed.
What did I do?
You and Cody do at the very beginning of this the easiest thing to get you the most applause, which is both of you. No regards for any word said previously. No word said yesterday matters. Dolphins are going to win the Super Bowl. Both of you before the season started.
Yeah, could still happen.
Yep, it will happen.
Not eliminated.
Exactly. We have a chance.
And in the middle of it, Whittingham wins.
How?
Because he's the career loser. As a Dolphin fan, he was pessimistic. You guys buried him. Billy and Chris laughing at 8-3. It's Tua. We've got everything figured out. The winner here is the loser. It is Chris. It is Chris Whittingham.
Congratulations, loser.
Everybody. Roy, you've been suspiciously quiet. All things Dolphins related all season. I think you might be scared of the fire.
This season or the last 20 seasons?
No, being quiet makes me the winner.
I would describe Roy on the Dolphins as emotionally unavailable.
I would describe him more as most likely to be fixing a doorknob and not watching the game at 1 p.m. Sunday because they've broken him.
And that's true. Taking my daughter to a dance recital.
Attaboy. Way more important.
But here they are, and the Dolphins, for all of this room's celebrations, have the same record as Jessica's pathetic 8-8 Steelers.
Ow!
Pathetic. I don't know what games you're watching. Back-to-back game-winning drives from the rookie Kenny Pickett for the Steelers, Dan. It has been quite the year for Kenny Pickett. I'm very
Those
happy
first 3.5 quarters, though. For 3.5 quarters, don't even bother watching the Pittsburgh offense.
That's why you play 4.
It's been quite the year for both your teams. I mean, the Bears had the best bad season in the history of football, and the Steelers, a surprising season here. I mean, we shouldn't be surprised, because Tomlin always does this, but how?
I have to say, for the first time in a while, I gave up a little bit on the Steelers midway through the season. I don't think I even watched the Steelers-Saints game, whichever week that was. I was like, I'm going to protect my mental health today. They were 2-6. They were playing so bad. But when TJ Watt came back and Kenny Pickett started playing a little bit better and started really going with the offense, they were humming a little bit better. The offensive line's been playing a little bit more cohesively. All of a sudden, they're back in it. They need a lot to happen to make the playoffs.
Ridiculous.
I don't even really.
That sentence is ridiculous.
Mind if
it ain't wrong
don't
though.
Make the playoffs because the Dolphins have to lose. I think the Patriots have to lose, and the Steelers have to win. As long as they win and finish with a winning season this year, I'm pretty content.
But
with that.
I need to say it because I'm the one who said at 8-3 they could lose the rest of their games. And I would still consider it a success because they have found a quarterback and they have found a coach. And structurally, organizationally, even though they've allowed more points than anybody in the conference but the Colts, I believe more in the idea that I can hope for great offense than I did before, for exciting offense. I've got a lot of people, Stugotz, saying today, well, I'd rather be the Raiders because they got cap space, they got picks, or I'd rather be the Lions because they're young and they've been, and maybe you would, but the Lions have not been better than the Dolphins this year. The Lions just suffer from reduced expectations, which are where the Dolphins should reside too. Your expectations should be really low. They shouldn't be, hey, we're going to win the Super Bowl this year because they gave us 6 minutes of offense.
The Dolphins need to make the playoffs for this to be a successful season. Otherwise, it's the worst type of season. You're good, but not good enough to make the playoffs. And you're bad enough where you're going to have, you're not making the playoffs, you're going to have, the 17th pick in the first round. That's not what you want.
Remember, the Dolphins don't have their own pick.
Okay.
They don't have any picks.
Right, thanks to Stephen Ross.
Well, right, exactly, because of the pursuit of Tom Brady. But I believe the Dolphins do have a reasonably high pick, I think in the second round, because of their trade either with San Francisco or with Philadelphia.
They went all in on this season. They went all in on this season.
That's for sure.
Yeah, but back to Whittingham for a second. He didn't think Tua was going to be this good, and Tua has proven to be a very good NFL quarterback.
It is the most frustrating kind of the 8-8 because they gave me the hope.
Right.
Normally, it's, talking yourself into a Joe Philbin coach team, and somebody, usually Greg will write a column that's like, reasons to be optimistic about the Dolphins this year. And there aren't actually really any reasons to be optimistic.
Hold on a second.
He's done that column.
He has written that column every year, but I love the way that Whittingham described the writing of that column, which is merrily elbow swinging back and forth in is it walk or dance?
Skipping.
It's singing in the rain.
It's okay. Wow,
That's
it's that.
true.
So it's Fred Astaire type dancing.
You're a young man in the rain.
Yeah, it's a weird reference for you to make.
I'm riding in the rain.
So, yes, Greg Cote has written that column for 20 years. Reasons to be optimistic. Chad Henne only threw 2 second-half interceptions.
Here are these select stats from Ryan Tannehill that prove why he's going to be great this year.
Okay, and at 8-3, everything looked copacetic. Everything looked great. Stugotz and I were right. They were headed to the Super Bowl. They went all in like very few teams do. The Rams did a couple of years ago and won a Super Bowl.
Tell 'em.
The Dolphins went all in. They went all in with the Tyreek Hill trade.
They've lost 5 in a row.
Went all in with the Terran Armstead signing. Went all in by signing Bradley Chubb at great cost in the middle of the season.
And again, Jessica's Steelers and Kenny Bleepin Pickett have the same record and she's saying the same things. Well, we need some things to happen to make the playoffs.
It's because Tua was injured. It's because he missed all these games with 2 concussions.
Kenny Pickett, by the way, also was not in a bunch of games because he had 2 concussions this season.
I get it.
And they're backup.
And that's legit. The problem with Dolphins and optimism.
Kenny Pickett has 6 touchdown passes this year.
Yeah.
He's not exactly a valuable commodity to
and
the Pittsburgh
they still
Steelers
ended
winning.
up in the
They're
same.
all at the end of.
That's not true.
They're all at the end of games. He's won them the games at the end.
The last 2 games in a row.
Correct.
It's because their defense is pretty good, which Miami's wasn't. Najee Harris didn't even have a good year. They still are 8-8. That's impressive. That's impressive.
Greg, I will say this. You talk about all the additions on the offense and the defense, and aren't they done to win games like at San Francisco, at Los Angeles, at Buffalo versus Green Bay and versus New England, where they all lost those 5 games in a row, and Tua threw over 300 yards once against the Packers?
The defense has been a huge disappointment. The special teams are awful. Dolphins are last in almost every metric on special teams, which nobody ever talks about. But the overarching thing with the Dolphins and optimism moving forward is Tua. He's very great when he's very good when he's healthy, but
how
he's
can you have
a
any
breakable
confidence?
Quarterback.
Right, exactly. How can you have any confidence now going forward?
When you drop him, he breaks. And I've had a couple of football players, former NFL players, former college players, tell me that he doesn't even know how to be sacked correctly. He falls wrong. He falls on his back, so his head snaps back. When you're sacked, generally you have a little bit of control on how you fall when you're sacked. Not always, but sometimes you're supposed to fall on your shoulder. He in both of his concussions, he falls right on his back and his head snaps.
Do you realize the qualifiers that you're placing here are the most fragile of hope destroyers? And we're talking about it again, a day removed from the perils of that sport. And I really don't know. It's a different conundrum than the Tannehill conundrum where we were arguing about it for 7 years. But the Tua thing is one of the most confusing things I've ever seen in sports. I'm not even kidding with the whole I've got to get him all of these perfect pieces so that in the modern age of quarterbacking, I can get a system quarterback who looks like the best quarterback in the league because I put together these pieces. However, my defense is terrible, and now I'm 8-8, and I don't know if Tyreek Hill and Waddle can stay healthy next season because of the perils of their sport, and you keep hoping on these things that are the flimsiest of things, and at that position, you're doing so with a quarterback I've never seen analyzed this way. Like fraud 1 week. Well, he played at San Diego and San Francisco. That looked like fraud to me. Or is it his head scrambled when he throws 3 interceptions against the Packers? Like the analysis is crazy. It's a crazy thing to bet millions and hundreds of millions of dollars on. The idea of can my quarterback in a sport that's unsafe keep his brain okay?
Right.
When I don't know how to protect him, I've been terrible on the offensive line, and Greg Cote's coming in here saying, Super Bowl, Super Bowl, Super Bowl, except my quarterback doesn't know how to fall.
Singing in the Rain was released in 1952. Whittingham, what are you doing?
So Greg was like 50?
It's a very common cultural reference, I would say.
It is. Yeah, beautiful song too.
What?
Singing in the Rain. You know, it connotes, you know, you're joyous, and it's like, you know what, no matter the situation around me, I'm gonna keep going. I'm singing in the rain.
I got a more modern reference for you. Wake me up before you go. That's what
That's fair. In terms of the
That's also
yes.
an
That's
oldie.
ancient. What
That's
are you
also,
saying?
That's an oldie.
Well, it's
by
more
our-
recent,
not as
though.
old.
I mean-
wake me up before you. Yes, it's more recent than Singing in the Rain. I mean,
So Greg was like 60 when that song came out.
That's right.
Okay.
Yes, indeed. Singing in the Rain's a classic. Fred Astaire's a classic. He's the best
Okay.
hoofer of his era.
no. Okay, please. We're going for a younger demo than
Why am I on here then?
Fair shout.
Hoofer.
Yes, Fred Astaire.
Hoofer.
Yeah.
You described him as, I don't think I've heard that term since Fred Astaire was Singing in the Rain.
Well, back in that era, you were either an Astaire guy or a Gene Kelly guy. I was an Astaire.
You could
guy.
only be one? Is that really?
They were like McCartney versus Jagger.
Have you-
I was an Astaire guy.
Really?
That is not what it was. That is
Gene
not.
Kelly had a lot of support back then.
I mean, he was there for it. You
Trust
weren't. I mean,
I have read of history, and he is basically having dance-offs with 2 of the whitest people in the history of dance.
Hoofer sounds like a male cow.
As opposed to heifer.
Yeah, like hoofer and
What
heifer.
is a hoofer? I've not heard that expression in many, many years,
Right.
and I've never heard I've heard crooner. I have not heard hoofer.
Just a dancer. That's all. Just a dancer.
Gene Kelly,
Yeah.
by the way, from Pittsburgh.
There you
Big
go.
fan of my Steelers.
How about that?
the release date
yeah.
for Wake Me Up Before You Go was somewhere in the 90s, but it was brought back by Glee, Dan, in 2014. That's a much more modern reference. Seriously.
Glee is also an ancient reference. I'm sorry.
The
That
10
was
years
15
ago.
Leah Michelles ago.
The thing that Whittingham was giving off more than Fred Astaire or Singing in the Rain was just a general Broadway musical type of happiness. Prancing around the stage, elbows out, a little bit of Ric Flair in it, but jollier, more gleeful, you might say.
It's what I was going for in the big game when everyone criticized my bad acting. Just sort of like look at us. We're on our way to L.A. Like I was doing
It
like
was
that.
bad acting.
Come on.
Should have been more like Gene Kelly.
Upward inflection.
He was trying to go for a jovial Broadway happiness, and it is the column that Cody has written for 20 years. And now, because he's been proven wrong by this team, betrayed again, his homerism again resulting in being soaked in mediocrity that really doesn't change if they win by a bounce against the Jets, who also are on the precipice of this shitty
it does, though.
diarrhea-stained
I think
area.
It does, though. I think for as much as this record sucks as a fan, it's 8-8. It's the same season the Dolphins have had my entire life. I do think that when you take on the context of 4 of the games have been lost when the backup quarterbacks have been in, right? That is appropriate context, I would say.
The last 5 by 1 score against non-losing teams.
Right, and if you look at like the points given up or the point differential, a lot of that comes in that 40 to whatever loss to the Jets, giving up a pick 6 this past weekend to the Patriots. You've got 4 games you lose with a backup quarterback. I would actually dare say that Greg has been right. very right. He was sort of the South Florida media voice that was leading Tua quite significantly. You kept saying you believed in Tua. I think he can do this. Tua still leads the NFL in quarterback rating, even after this bad month that he has had. He has put up great numbers. The offense has flowed. It's only when he gets concussed or plays the San Francisco 49ers, who are a damn good defense. The one mark against his record this year has been his performance against the Los Angeles Chargers. It was a beat-up defense. It was a bad performance. But sometimes,
and the fourth quarter against the Packers, when none of us knew at the time. Yeah, but none of us knew at the time he was concussed. Yeah. Then you're given the information afterward that he was concussed.
But in the overall, Greg has been right about this offense and about Tua.
Right.
Every time they have stepped on the field in normal circumstances, I have felt good about how they move the ball. Even in that Green Bay game, the first half was really exciting. That Jalen Waddle 75-yard touchdown was exciting. Tua even had throws in that second half, in and amongst the terrible interceptions that were pretty good throws. This offense works, in my opinion. There are people who have been criticizing Mike McDaniel in this past week for losing 5 in a row, and fair enough. You can't argue with the results. But I think Greg has been right about this team, even as they stare at the same record as they usually have.
And Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle have been exactly as great as a tandem as I thought they would be. They have 3,000 yards between them with a game to play. They've been great. Tua, when healthy, has been pretty damn great. Pro Bowl quality great, but the health issue is the big thing with him, and you can't get around it.
And that's the frustrating bit heading into your future is you have the same question, but in a completely different way. Can you project Tua forward? Which is last year is because I thought he was bad, and this year it's because he was good, but he cannot keep his brain protected.
The decision is going to come up. This is where they get into a really bad spot organizationally by going all in on this year. It's a terrible spot. They're going to have to decide whether to pay him. And in that sport, when you are the team that went into this season, whether the defense performed or not, that was supposed to be an elite front four and elite secondary. Injuries made that hard, and again, gave up more points than any team in the conference except for the Colts. And only are behind the Colts by 2. Like, gave up a lot of defense. You cannot tell me that team that went into Buffalo and played that football game isn't good enough to beat any team in the sport anywhere, given how Tua and that offense played. And then all of a sudden they're up 28-21, but it's Josh Allen's going to run for 44 yards, longest run of his career. And in that game, you're going to lose to the Bills that way. When he did enough, they did enough. And that Bills game is something the Dolphins have been losing for 20 years, and it ain't that way. It ain't where you're like, oh, they're just as good as the best in the sport. But you're going to have to pay Tua. And you're going to have to pay him on the decision of, oh, my God, I'm going to have to pay backups too. I'm going to have to pay backup quarterbacks. And all of this is within the context of, again, a question that I can't answer that we were asking yesterday that you weren't here, Cody. Should Tua keep playing? Right. Like, we keep putting this hope on him. Amin was talking yesterday about culturally he's been bred Samoan style to be football. And if you've ever seen the reports on the way culturally that this sport matters in his to his people, he's got no choice to be. He's got to be out toughing all the toughest. That's the cultural way. That's what you're up against. And people are asking me in the street, should he keep playing?
Right, and it's a valid question. And one of the problems is the Dolphins' offensive line still isn't very good. If he's playing behind the Eagles' offensive line, the best line in football, he doesn't get sacked as much. And part of his fragility is sort of mitigated. But behind that offensive line, he's a concussion waiting to happen. I hate to say it, but it's a
Greg,
factor.
you can't dismiss that. And so, to Dan's point, they do have to decide whether or not they want to sign him and give him big money, or, much like the Jets, this is a team that could win right now. The Dolphins are good enough to win right now if they have a quarterback who can remain healthy for 16 games, an entire season, essentially. And you have guys out there like Derek Carr. And so it's going to be interesting to see how the Dolphins approach this and what they do, because I don't know what to do. I really don't. I would be perplexed and confused as to what to do simply based on Tua's inability to stay healthy.
Right. And the frustrating thing with the defense, too, is that they have great young pieces on the defense. Jalen Phillips has had a great season. Javon Holland is great. Christian Wilkins has had the best season of his career.
Their second, again, please explain this part to me. they've given up a ton of points.
Yeah, they have.
You just named an awful lot of players. You didn't even mention Xavier Howard.
Xavier Howard made the Pro Bowl and shouldn't have, and is in pretty obvious decline. Their other starting cornerback hasn't played it down all season. He's been useless to them.
Which was the game plan. The game plan was we will blitz a lot and we'll have two good man corners on the outside that can survive it.
Right.
I mean, you get rid of one of them and you have a bust of a first-round pick, Noah Benogany, who has not done anything for this team. And that's your whole game plan. Then it kind of came crumbling down, and they still run put the two linebackers in the A gap and try and run blitzes and stuff, and teams are ready for it.
Yep. You're right. Their defensive plan is totally contingent on having two great cover corners, and they didn't this year because one wasn't great and one never played.
I've been kicking around back here. Do you think it's time something that they can do equipment-wise for Tua? Like, you remember when Wes Welker had that big helmet where he had extra padding inside, or maybe the soft caps that they wear in practice? Like, is there something that they can do to protect him?
Like, they've got to do everything. Like, explore every possibility over these 9 months. Teach Tua how to fall, equipment. Like, because at this point, you are trying to protect an investment of at least a first-round pick. Stugotz mentioned the Jets as an example in terms of, like, how to proceed forward. I actually think the Giants are fairly instructive here because they also had a first-round pick in Daniel Jones that they were unsure about, and they declined his fifth-year option. They said, play out your fourth year. And he has played out his fourth year, and now he will be a free agent and is due to make a lot of money. And there's a lot of conversation around the Giants of, all right, how much are they going to pay Daniel Jones? And if you feel good about that decision with Tua at the end of next season, then maybe he will have solved his concussion issues. But I think you decline the fifth-year option and you try and do everything you can over these next 9 months to protect him.
Is that a serious? That is a serious sentence to offer as a qualifier. Maybe he solves his concussion problems. Like we are that when you talk about how these guys get dehumanized, and I don't even mean it's the language here, but when you talk about fantasy sports, and you just mentioned at this point he's an investment. Do you guys see like the conundrum of what this week has been with football, given what we just did yesterday, where you're talking about investment and if he can solve his concussion problem, hey, can we get him new equipment? Hey, should he still be playing? Hey, the Dolphins seemed like they were good enough to beat anybody, but health was a factor, because duh. Because in that sport, duh. And, the whole thing that they built, no matter how they built it, structurally, it's solid. But, look. Armstead can't play every week, can't play half the weeks, can't protect him every week because he's always hurt, because the bodies break down, because those human beings are too large to do that, and the sport's not a healthy sport.
But I think with the exception of a few teams that are going to make the playoffs, San Francisco being one of them, most of their quarterbacks have had displayed the ability to stay healthy for the most part. Whether it's Burrow, whether it's Josh Allen, whether it's Patrick Mahomes, whether it's Kirk Cousins, any of those guys, Daniel Jones, those guys have the ability to,
Brady.
Whatever that is, Brady, Rodgers, they have the ability to stay healthy.
Is it an ability?
Yeah, I don't know if you can just say, hey, let's solve the concussion problem. He has a problem with concussions.
And I'm glad that Dan checked some of my language, certainly in our language, because, yeah, I do think that Tua, for his, and Amin referenced it yesterday, his story is that guy was bred to play football. That guy is desperate to keep playing football. Like, I think, he would play. I don't know what his status is going to be for this weekend. My guess is he won't play, but I feel like he would say, yeah, I'm good, coach. I'm ready to go back in. Like, he seems like someone, and maybe someone, the Dolphins, the NFL needs to take that decision out of his hands. But if we're going to these conversations are happening in the Dolphins building.
For sure.
They have to figure out in the long term what you're doing with this player.
Well, one of the biggest cliches you hear in the NFL is the most essential ability is availability. And the option you bring up is a very viable option for the Dolphins, which is to wait a year to offer the big contract and to tell Tua, very frankly, we need a 16-game season out of you. We need to show that you can remain healthy for us, because right now he's missing games when they so desperately need him, and that's not his fault, but it's a reality the Dolphins have to deal with.
But Greg, can honest to God, I know that the probabilities now seem to suggest that he is quote unquote injury prone, that he is somebody who is more likely than other people in that sport, we believe based on perception, to get injured and some of the things that we've seen. But that's not an ability. Nobody has that ability. The sport's not safe.
Right.
Like you've got, hey, in negotiations, hey, Tua, you got to prove to us that you can stay healthy. Nobody in this sport can prove that. Brady does it every year somehow.
Right.
But
he's the anomaly.
But it's not like, what are you talking about? You got to prove to me, Greg, you're not going to get into a car accident on the way home.
No, I get what you're saying, and this is the most brutal sport. If you retire from the NFL at age 35 with gnarled hands and an old man's limp, you're one of the lucky ones. A lot of players don't even get that far. And one of the things in all the DeMar Hamlin talk the past couple of days, one of the things that hasn't even been mentioned much is that he was not a starter to begin the season. The only reason he's playing at all is that their Pro Bowl safety, Micah Hyde, suffered a neck injury so serious in week 2 that it prevented him from playing all season. A neck injury. That's pretty serious. And it's just a brutal sport. And Tua, it would be the same if he had a knee injury that knocked him out for a season. But the brain injury, the threat of CTE down the road for him is something that if I were his parent, I would be very, very concerned about that.
I have a neuroscience question. I don't know if anybody here is qualified to answer, but it's a question. Okay.
I got
Stu,
you.
this one's for you.
Yep.
It seems like
Wheelhouse.
you rattled off a bunch of different quarterbacks that, to my memory, haven't had a concussion, right? You're talking about Brady, you're talking about Rodgers, you're talking about Kirk Cousins, you're talking about these guys, and it's like...
That we know of,
but registered, documented concussions.
Tom Brady has never missed a game due to a concussion in his career.
And he's played more games as an NFL quarterback than the stat, whatever it was that Dan gave yesterday, than been a human or whatever it is.
Crazy.
The fact that those guys haven't had concussions.
You want to frame that stat?
Well, no. That's the way I said it yesterday, and things were moving quickly. And
that's what I got it from.
It actually makes sense to me.
The stat is not correct that he's been a long. He's been.
He was a human then, and now he's a superhero.
Yeah, now he's a cyborg.
Yeah, right.
The stat, the way you delivered it, the stat is not correct that Tom Brady has been an NFL quarterback longer than he's been a human. That
feels
is
like it,
okay, but it does feel like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's superhuman now.
So with that all said, the question I have is, it feels like more people are prone to concussions than other people, right? Like maybe Tua is just a body type or a person that is more susceptible to concussions than somebody else. Like, is that something that we've studied before?
They did say in all of the reporting that I read that once you've had a single concussion, you are more likely to get more concussions.
Yes, it's a compounding problem, which is one of the big issues.
And I don't know what to do with some of the stuff that I was saying yesterday, which is the Bills had a player, a very important player, a Pro Bowler, a center, Mitch Morse, returning from a 6th concussion, a 6th reported concussion. I don't know if people around him are saying perhaps you should quit. Troy Aikman is one of the few that left, and this was before we were documenting this stuff this way. Troy Aikman left because he'd had too many concussions. But I just can't believe that the team I saw play in Buffalo, which, again, Stugotz, that game, in that place, under those conditions, the Dolphins went blow for blow with that team in a way that wasn't the way they played down here, where the Dolphins were backpedaling all game and trying to avoid haymakers from the Bills. They went to Buffalo in December, top of the division. Those are the favorites to win the Super Bowl if it's not the Chiefs, and they went blow for blow with them, and the defense betrayed them at the end. And I just don't know how you do these structural arguments on how to build an organization with money and a salary cap when Greg Cote can be right saying Super Bowl, but they're 8-8 like the Steelers. And I've got people telling me the Lions are in better shape because they're younger and they've got more room and more space. And like that can't be the fluctuation of the analysis and have the analysis be any kind of sturdy. You don't know who's any good in this sport because health can undermine you at any turn. The Eagles no longer look like the team that they did.
But will they look like the team that they did when Jalen Hurts comes back? I don't know. We're going to see.
They're hurt is my point.
Right.
They're hurt at the wrong time to be hurt.
They're hurts, yeah. We know that Kansas City's good. We know Buffalo's good. We know Jacksonville's going to be good for the next 10 years if Trevor Lawrence stays healthy. We know Joe Burrow's good.
Jesus.
Like we do know something.
We know that Jacksonville's going to be good.
We know Jacksonville's going to be good.
I said I gave a qualifier if Trevor Lawrence is going to stay healthy. We know they're going to be good. Yes.
And they get Calvin Ridley back next season, by the way. Just to throw that in.
Just to throw that in, right?
Can
Nice little
Jacksonville
sprinkle.
be good for 2 seasons where we say they're going to be good for 10?
How about for 1 season? How about this season?
Right. They've been good
like
for
they're
half
pretty
a
good,
season.
yeah.
They've had one
Looks like they're hosting a home game. I mean,
Won the division, man.
I know Mike Vrabel. You're
Mike
going to have
Vrabel,
to
don't
kill
do it.
him. I
Don't do
get
it. I
it.
care
I
about you.
understand it. Okay?
You're giving
I
him
get
the
it.
division.
I'm
You
all in
better
on
be
Doug
careful.
Marrone, though.
Play that sound again of how bad do you think Stugotz texted me this during the break. How bad do you think Billy Gill felt as they welcomed in Mike Golick's good friend Doug Peterson, as Stugotz and Billy just traffic off the name of Golick to get important football credibility, and then Billy Gill introduces Doug Peterson, the playoff coach of the Jacksonville Jags, this way on God Bless Football.
Hey, Coach Marrone, we're currently talking about Mike Golick's wife forging his signature on things.
Don't
Peterson.
Coach Marrone, even though
Coach Peterson.
Coach
sorry.
Marrone!
Oh,
What
that's
the
a
hell
fine.
was that?
Wow.
I'm gone.
Fine.
See ya.
Yeah,
That's
sorry.
7 coaches ago.
Oh, he just turned the Zoom off, and he should turn.
Wow. No wonder Billy's taking the day off.
Hey, Coach Marrone, we're
That sort of thing never happens on Golick and Smetty, by the way.
Is that an understandable mistake? Because I feel like it is.
I mean, it's Jacksonville coaches with a first name Doug, but I mean, that. By the way, it
was 5 years ago.
I was
Well,
curious.
Peterson said, he goes, my name's in the Zoom box.
Right.
And then he goes, well, Doug, okay, I could see how you...
But if your name is, then look at the Zoom box and address the name in the Zoom box. I will say though, if you're trying to like mount a defense, how can you be looking at someone's face and say you're Doug Marrone? Doug Marrone? He doesn't even look like Doug Peterson. I also wonder, so Golick calls him out. Would Doug Peterson have called him out if Golick hadn't said something first? Or would Doug Peterson have just blown right through it?
Doug Peterson shut off his Zoom the second that Billy did it. I didn't bring it up until later, but he shut off the Zoom. He came back eventually because Golick sent him a text.
He turned off his camera?
Yeah, but he was just kind of playing around. Like he knew it was not. Listen, Billy tried to grab the steering wheel, and I'm happy that he did. He was trying to take a conversation professionally into it's Doug Marrone. He made a mistake. It happens, but Billy has not been the same since. I can tell you that. I have never seen him this rattled before in my life.
It feels like when you listen to it, towards the back end, there's a bit of like Billy devolving into a fake Stugotz. If you listen to it, he's like, oh, my bad, buddy, dude, Doug Marrone, Coach Marrone.
He's learned from the best.
Hey, Coach Marrone, we're currently talking about Mike Golick's wife forging his signature
Coach
on
Marrone.
things.
Don't
Peterson.
Coach Marrone, even though
Coach Peterson.
Coach
sorry.
Marrone! What
that's
the
a
hell
fine.
was that? I'm
That's
gone.
fine.
See ya.
Yeah,
That's
sorry.
7 coaches ago.
Oh, he just turned the Zoom off, and he should turn the Zoom off on you.
See, this is my
Coach Meyer.
This is my fear when I bring on someone, a former teammate, a friend, a guy I know, and I bring him on with trepidation with people like you three because I don't know what the hell you're going to say, and then Billy, you start off like that.
I'm sorry, I can leave.
Coach, do me a favor. Call Billy. It will only be funny to 5 people, but call him Chris Cote, okay?
Yeah.
Well, look what happens. Look what happens in here. And this is Billy works very hard on God Bless Football. Appearances to the contrary. Look at what happens in the middle of that, though, when Stugotz is here taking all the sides, as he always does, but he's being jocular with Golick and Peterson and burying Billy. But you'll hear in the middle of that, as Billy's mortified, you'll hear Stugotz say, "That's a fine." He said like he's not trying to help Billy there. Billy feels terrible. Like feels truly
I feel the sweat down the back of his leg.
Billy would do the same to me. That's what you do to friends. I mean,
yes.
That's a fair point.
All right, put it on the poll, please, Roy, at LeBatardShow. Is what you do to friends take their money when they're scared, panicked, and unprofessional?
Hey, Coach Marrone, we're currently talking about Mike Golick's wife forging his signature
Coach
on
Marrone.
things.
Don't Coach Marrone, even though
Coach Peterson.
Coach
sorry.
Marrone. What
that's
the
a
hell
fine.
was that?
That's
I'm gone.
fine.
See ya.
Yeah,
That's
sorry.
7 coaches ago.
he just turned
Billy
the Zoom
called
off, and he
himself
should turn the
first.
Zoom off on you.
See, this is my fear.
Coach Meyer.
Stugotz is so used to repeating Billy's jokes that Billy find himself first.
I would have faked a bad internet connection and dropped off the Zoom. Like I couldn't have bared.
I would have just said I was swearing in Italian. Oh, Maron. That's all I meant.
Yeah, put your fingers together.
You gotta put
Maron.
your fingers together.
Yeah, I would have blamed senility, but that option was not open to Billy. So,
what are you supposed to do with the analysis of the Dolphins, Cody? You've had a homer year. You get to be right according to Whittingham. Whittingham gets to be right as the biggest loser around here. Another loser year for the Dolphins.
Well, no, the season's not over yet. Can we not do that? Like, if the Patriots lose, the Dolphins win at home against a Jet team that doesn't have a quarterback, like, the Dolphins are in the playoffs, and they'll have to go to a place like Buffalo or Cincinnati, and they've already proven with Tua that they can win in those places.
Your arbitrary measurements. Think about what... No, it's not over. Agreed, it's not over. However, it's the easiest thing to say. It's not over. They're not any different of a team if they beat the Jets and then the Patriots then win than they would be if they beat the Jets and the Patriots then lost. One of them puts them in the playoffs and you haven't being a successful season. The other one doesn't. I'm saying they're the same team under both circumstances, and that team has after creating a great deal of hope, now wheezes into the playoffs off of a bunch of losses in a row, and you don't believe in it the same way that you do, and you don't know if we're going to be having this conversation in 2 weeks because your quarterback comes back and gets concussed again.
Right, well, that's what you don't believe in. You don't believe in his ability to stay healthy. If he's healthy, you believe in their ability as a team to beat any team in the AFC. I don't care.
Right.
They went up to Buffalo with Tua healthy. They had a chance to win the game.
The Dolphins are famously cursed. And one of the reasons is this. If you're Mike McDaniel and Chris Greer alone in a room right now discussing things we're discussing, they are perfectly entitled to say, man, when Tua is healthy, he proved this year, Tua did. When he's healthy, he's very good. He's what we need. But that's the biggest if in the NFL right now, whether Tua can stay healthy. The biggest if in the NFL, by far, in my mind, is this league-leading quarterback with passer rating, with a concussion problem that might not ever go away. What do they do? And that's the problem with the Dolphins situation right now moving forward. They can't know what to do.
But
they can't know.
It's not just the Dolphins situation. I'm sorry if some of this feels redundant, but it is the Tua's life with a healthy brain situation that we keep sort of skipping past in a way that feels like we're forgetting what his hands look like in front of his face not half a season ago when we were talking about, well, holy shit, before what we saw this week, when we were talking about, oh, that makes me deeply uncomfortable. That's not something I have seen before. The idea that you are tying your multi-million-dollar hopes organizationally, that everything relies on getting value at that position, when you have to decide to pay him, and you're saying that what it's built on, this entire thing is built on the popsicle stick of, hey, please, I'm praying that you can stay healthy, even though you're more probable to not, playing that thing that is wildly unhealthy and unpredictably unhealthy. It's impossible.
Right.
It's an impossible situation.
Yeah, I don't think that's a football decision. I think it's beyond football. I think that's a decision where Tua and his younger brother, who is also a quarterback, Tua and his brother and his mother and his father are in a room going, wow, do we want to do this for a living? As a life, do we want to do this and risk all of what may come to us in the future? And here's the problem. Football won't let you go. Football does not let you go. And one of the earliest memories I have in the late 70s was a New England Patriot player named Darryl Stingley being paralyzed during a game. Paralyzed. And and his quadriplegia led to him dying young. His grandson today plays for the Houston Texans. No matter what happens, even in your family, football won't let you go. And that's the situation with Tua right now. Can he let go of the sport that is very harmful to him?
Have you guys heard Samoan players? Have you heard them talk about culturally how it is that a small place in Hawaii produces a disproportionate amount of football players? Culturally, there might not be a culture that prides itself more on you tough it out in football. You out tough other tough people in football because our people are tough. I just don't the crossroads that he is at, that we are watching, that we have all the warning signals all around us. To me, it makes it, honest to God, the craziest analysis of a player that I've ever had to make in this market.
I understand the culture, but don't you think, like any family, to Greg's point, and I agree with it, that they're going to sit down as a family and try to figure this out together? Like they are. I get how important it is to Tua. I get how important it is to the culture. But I also, Dan, understand their parents and their son keeps getting concussed. And you don't think they're going to sit down and have an educated conversation with doctors about whether or not he should continue to play this game? I mean,
I can't know that. What I am just telling you is that every tug from everywhere,
right,
patterns, life experiences, the way you've been brought up, your brother's a quarterback too, the Tungavaloa name. The Samoan guys don't usually get to be the quarterbacks. They're the guys who are tougher than you in the middle of the line. They don't get to be the skill guys very often.
Yeah, they're the big guys.
Okay, maybe Stugotz. Like I don't know. I'm just saying the pressure from everywhere is to keep playing. And I don't know. I'd ask everyone in the audience and you too. I'd ask you too, as someone who loves football, if it's the gravy train, if it's the glory train, if it's the money train, if it's paying for everything and everyone.
They'd have to drag me off the field.
Because the money is, the risk pays. Like it's one of the incentives to go out on the field, the contracts, the coldness of all of this, like the reason, that's what the money's for in some instances.
If Tua has a similar season next season as he did this season, and I'm including the injury, he misses a couple of games, he's still going to get paid a lot of money, right? The Dolphins are going to pay him, or someone else is going to pay him.
No, those contracts aren't what they were, Stugotz. It's a lot of money by normal standards. It's not going
to be Mahomes money, but it's still going to be a life-changing amount of money.
What I'm saying, the decision that family has to make now is about generational wealth, and he's not at generational wealth. The next contract gets him to generational wealth, and that's yet another pressure that is here.
Right. But Dan, I'm just saying, if he plays next season, and has a similar season, but he misses 3 or 4 games again because of concussion, and the Dolphins say, hey, we're going to move on, someone else is going to sign Tua and pay him a lot of money, right? And he has to factor that into the equation because it ends generations of his family financially.
But at what cost your brain? Like that's why it's so fascinating.
So tough,
at what cost the love of your son? Like that's at what cost?
And what we've seen here, the NFL has all but criminalized sacking the quarterback. That doesn't protect the quarterback. No matter what the NFL does institutionally, they can't protect the quarterback, let alone an injury-prone, concussion-prone quarterback. And another thing is that this is human nature at play here. We never think it's going to happen to us, okay? There's mass shootings all over the country. We never think it's going to happen to us when we're watching a parade. There's injuries. There's CTE. If you're Tua right now, if you're his father, you don't think that's not going to happen to my son. Tua's not going to. No, that's not going to happen to him. He had a concussion. Now he's going to move on. That's human nature.
But it's already happening to your son, though. You're gonna Lovey's going to be that blind. Like it's happened to your son in a way that the previous scary incident in Cincinnati, before the latest scary incident in football in Cincinnati, was your son.
Right. Yeah, and Darryl Stingley's grandfather died because he became paralyzed in a football game, but he's still playing. You never think it's going to happen to you. That's human nature.
Well, this is the conversation I was trying to lead you guys into, as you just said. You don't think his parents will just sit around and be like, maybe you should get out? Well, let's make it you two. And how many jerseys Cody would be wearing to the game that said Cody on the back if Chris Cody was the quarterback of the Dolphins?
It took a weird turn when I asked Greg, make it Christopher. What would you want him to do as a parent? He's on the verge of a $250 million contract. but he keeps getting concussed. It's not good for him. It's clearly unhealthy.
Greg Cote would push him back out there and use him as a weekly guest on his podcast to increase the clicks of the Greg Cote Show featuring Greg Cote. You guys are sitting here.
You're saying he would shove him back on the field?
I'm just laughing at the two of you. What you say on air versus what you say off air when it starts to be about a $250 million contract, and the most important thing, whether you can get glory off of your son or daughter's name.
I have to admit, the idea that Chris Cote is a star quarterback for the Miami Dolphins really would increase the popularity of the Greg Cote Show podcast. And for that reason alone, I might have to encourage him. Christopher, you're a strong guy. What are the odds you're going to get another concussion? Come on. I believe in you. Believe in yourself. Give it another shot.
Greg Cote would actively be applying pressure opposite that of the doctors.
How are the two parents?
What do they know?
How are the two parents in the room being the least responsible about
because
this?
They're the most selfish and narcissistic.
We're not saying what we would do. In fact, Greg said, if it makes Christopher happy, and that's what you want for your child, if going out on a field, playing football at a very high level, but the occasional brain injury is what makes you happy,
you can't say
go
that.
out there and do it.
You can't say that laughing. Roy, you're a parent. You would never with Claire.
So ridiculous.
You would never be that kind of selfish. But you are a loving adult who is not searching for something to fill his empty nest.
That's true. That's absolutely true. I'm not as barbaric as these two in here. Like, no, never. I would never do that.
I wouldn't let my dog play football.
If your dog played football, that'd be a good story.
Airbud.
Yeah.
I would like to see it.
Scat back.
Jessica, I don't know what is wrong with, I'm going to say your math. Perhaps it's just delusions about your athleticism. But you were making the serious argument that you feel like you could throw an orange how far?
Well, did you guys watch any of the Orange Bowl? It was Tennessee and Clemson last weekend. It kind of got overshadowed by all the other.
Yeah,
New
I
Year's
was
Six
there,
games.
Unfortunately.
You
What
were?
what a stinker of a bowl game.
Yeah, it was a stinker. I thought, both teams are orange. This is going to be epic. No, in fact, it was not. It was Clemson's offense is just so bad.
There were two uniform matchups in the major college football bowl games where you couldn't tell in the crowd who was supporting who.
What was
Because
the
you also had
other one?
Ohio State and Georgia.
Oh, yeah.
Or they're both
Lots
wearing
of
red,
red.
and so it's just everyone's wearing red, and it was like a pale shade of orange as opposed to a bright shade of orange in the Orange
They're
Bowl.
totally different oranges, but that's besides the point. Yeah. There was a segment, Greg, you would have missed this if you were at the game. There was a segment on ESPN about Joe Milton throwing an orange 100 yards.
Right.
And I'm just going to throw this out there. It doesn't look that hard to throw an orange 100 yards. I feel like I could probably do it. And I tweeted about it, and I won't name names, but someone DM'd me and said, it's really not that hard to do. I did it in high school once, and I wasn't even that good of an athlete. And so I thought,
But you're not even counting the roll. You're saying you feel like you could just take
I could
an
just chuck
orange.
that thing.
With
it's
the
an
roll,
orange.
you mean? With the roll, you mean?
Maybe a little roll, but not a big roll. I could chuck. It's an orange. It just didn't look that hard. I mean, maybe that's how good of a quarterback.
I mean,
Joe
we could
Milton
set
is.
this up. It's very easy. There's
Like right now.
Yeah, there's a field out.
I want to
by Loomis Park.
I need to get
participate
mashed
as
before
well.
I throw anything because it's been a long break. I had
That seems
shingles.
like a lot of
I'm still in
excuses.
recovery.
Shingles.
That sounds like an old person.
It
really
is.
does.
That is.
But
that
like
is how much this show has aged me in a year and a half.
She's not that young.
I have the shingles.
The shingles didn't affect you at all.
The shingles did affect me. What do you mean? Who are you, Whittingham?
You
to
told
tell
me-
how the
Dr.
shingles
Whittingham.
affected
You
me.
told me the shingles have not bothered me
Yeah,
at all.
maybe I downplayed it because I'm a brave little girl. Did you ever think about that?
Oh my God.
I could throw a navel orange 100 yards. I'm not going to do it because I don't need to prove anything to any of you. And I know Tony agrees. Tony probably thinks he could throw 200 yards.
500.
It didn't look that hard to me. In orange. If it was like a discus or a shot put, yeah, that's hard. But it's an orange. It flies.
But then you also think you can throw a baseball 100 yards.
No, baseball, that's insane. Don't be crazy.
The orange seems like something you could easily throw at least 50 yards, doesn't it?
Yeah, half a football field. That's
Right?
what I was thinking.
Yeah.
I set my own personal over-under at 38.5 yards.
Oh, Whitty, come on.
I think we're underestimating. Like, Joe Milton is a college quarterback who's got
And this is no
38
shade
and a
to
half yards
him,
is
by
right
the way.
there.
He played really well. Like I'm sure he is very talented. He's a good quarterback. But this is not like me saying that he's not an impressive quarterback. This is me saying like the orange maybe not the.
It has some carry.
Exactly.
Exactly,
The wind's
right.
going to take it at least 20 more yards.
I don't believe that unless you're in hurricane force winds.
Luckily, we live in Miami.
At your back, of course.
I don't believe that you are going to get all of a sudden you are sailing an orange into the sky that has 20 extra yards on it because you now have the orange floating like a feather of some sort.
No, I think the orange is wound up tight enough where you could throw it right through the wind. I think I could do this. I would like to go out and throw an orange.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, let's do
We all
it.
agree. All the smart people.
Joe Milton's orange exploded when it landed.
I don't think I could
I'm
do
looking
that.
at the video now.
But where did it land? How
So he threw it from what I can tell of the video is they're throwing it on a practice field, and it seems like he chucked it from like the 10-yard line, and there's like a barrier like outside of the end
Like a
zone,
fence,
like
and
a
it hit the fence.
and there's like a little bench there. I think it hit the bench, and then the orange is completely detonated.
And he also threw it like, I don't know, 30 or 40 yards into the air. Like he arm punted it.
Yeah, you have to throw.
I would need to do
you
that.
wouldn't need
I wouldn't
to do
need
that.
It would just be a laser, is what you're saying.
I'm assuming that you would want to throw it like a punt so that you would throw it as you're saying throw it as a line drive.
You throw a line drive.
Yes.
It's like when you drive a golf ball. For me, anyway. If the trajectory of my golf ball is like a jetliner taking off, I get much more carry than if I sky the ball.
Right.
Like a 7-iron.
Of
or
course.
something.
Like a sand wedge.
Right. Yeah. So my strategy would be to throw a line drive.
A P.
So that I would get 2/3 more roll than I get on the fly.
I think we need to do this before the end of the show. I don't think Jessica has to participate until she's been mashed. That's fine. But I do think we need to send Cody out and Stugotz out with navel oranges to see, again, the two most delusional of our athletes around here, the ones who think they could kick field goals from 50 yards.
I've done it.
And make 10 threes in a game, 10 threes in a game.
Didn't you like tear your hamstring doing it?
He did.
Please get the song back there that celebrates the tearing of the quad that happened as he kicked an extra point successfully after missing several others.
Stugotz did return a serve from a professional tennis player.
Yeah, with a
merely
cigarette in my mouth.
One year ago.
Yeah.
I am just saying there's a couple things you see and you're like, I feel like this might be the exact thing that my limited skill set could accomplish. And to me, the orange video was that thing that I saw this weekend.
I hear you.
Where are we setting the over-under? Is it Whittingham's over-under?
No, that's
Is it-
ridiculous. Whittingham, you can throw
38 yards
you
is
can throw
pathetic.
an orange more than 38 yards.
38 yards is nothing.
You will be able.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
A football.
For an orange.
I don't know that we could throw a football necessarily 38
Yeah, we
yards.
can.
I could throw a
Everyone in this
football
room.
38
Yes, we
yards,
can.
I'm not
please.
sure everyone in
I
this
can.
room can. I'm not positive everyone in this room
I would need to
can.
get mashed first, but I could do it.
Greg Cote thinks he can throw a football easily 40 yards. Do you?
In the air or with a bounce?
In the air. In the
40
air.
yards would be a little tough, but I think I could do it. Yeah. Yeah, I would
I'd
summon.
be surprised
I would
if you got to 25.
No, I would summon my old man's strength, and you'd
You
be
could
shocked.
chest pass at 25, Dr. Pepper challenge style.
It says here on the internet that the average person can throw a football between 40 and 45 yards.
What does it say about
as
oranges?
far as Jim Plunkett threw
Can
it.
There
you
you
Google
go.
how far can the average person throw an orange? Is that on Google?
It's well, I haven't tried yet.
I think we
will
should
try
test
right
this
now.
instead. I think we should live life instead of searching for it on the internet. I think we should do our own measurements and find out what it is that the strengths of the room are here. Did you guys go ahead and play the song here celebrating Cody's tearing of the hamstring?
I've never seen Cody in the flesh, but he sounds like he's 80 years old. I know he's not proud of how he dresses, in an 80s shirt and a 70s haircut. But on the show he's like knuckleball, curveball, I can hit a home run. Kershaw, Verlander, don't matter who is throwing, I don't care. I'll hit them 400 feet in air. And then Greg Cote's like, I can take D, Wade, and Bosch on the double team, find the open man, and even if they're guarding me, I don't care. I'm draining threes from everywhere, and I can kick field goals. Like my idol Fuad Revis, I'll hit from 50 yards at least. Even though I'm missing PATs, I'm good enough to place wagers. And win the money from left.
Let's do that in the post-game show. We will send out Cody and Stugotz with video and oranges and find out how far they indeed can throw both an orange and a football. I've got a couple of broadcasting-related questions for you. One of them, I don't know if Peyton and Eli Manning did every game this season. I know that during the Monday Night Football game, in going back and forth, toggling between the channels, I did not see them because I think ESPN went to Sirius coverage. I did not know whether they were on earlier than that or not. They don't do every game every year.
They don't do every game. I think they agreed to do 10 games this year, so I don't know if last Sunday was one of those games. Monday, excuse me, but they do 10 games, I believe.
Regardless, I reported, and I thought this was just wonderful, and I want it to be true, that Peyton Manning does that show from a friend's garage area because he doesn't want that stuff in his house.
That is true. We had Eli Manning on God Bless Football, and he did tell us that, yes.
Did Billy call him Peyton?
Cooper.
How is that possible? How much? I don't even know if that's his decision, if his wife's decision, the family decision. I don't know whose decision that is. But
you would think he can build an extra wing on the house. That's the TV studio.
Yeah, let's just casually build a wing in our house instead of go to his friend's. Apparently, it's a warehouse, according to this story that I just saw. His friend just casually has a warehouse. Dan, would your wife let you put all of this equipment in your house?
She would in a different house, not the one that I have here, but she would build around. This is such a big project, right? Peyton is doing what LeBron James is doing, which is in post-retirement, all these guys are going to compete for where there's money in the content business. The Mannings and Omaha Productions have a great deal, not just with McAfee and a bunch of other people. They got a great deal with ESPN, where ESPN, hey, you want to just do 10 a year? That's fine. You want to do it from your friend's garage? That's fine. You want to do it from different places? You don't have to be there. The Manning name will just be so famous that we will give you millions of dollars in exposure and credibility and money to just produce this thing. What a cool endeavor for Peyton Manning to have that much strength over his brand where he can just see like, no, man, I'm not even putting your stuff in my house.
I can't, I wonder what's going on the other 335 days of the year when they're not involved in doing this show, where they've got so much going on, presumably business-wise, or Peyton Manning is good, to not really go all in. Like Eli Manning said on God Bless Football, we didn't really want to travel. And it's like, that the show would be better if they were in the same room. And they don't, one lives in Denver, the other, does Eli still live in New Jersey?
They're doing it their way, though.
They can meet in a central location in an hour-and-a-half flight.
But they don't have to.
Stugotz, they're doing it their way, but they are also not showing the zeal for perfection that they showed as quarterbacks. It's the laziest possible way for them to do it. It's just,
I'm proud of them.
Slap the Manning name on there, use it to get a few guests, and Peyton will go over and have a couple of beers at his friend's warehouse, and don't put his equipment in your house. And he'll be there 10 of the 16 weeks.
I wonder, though, if now that the Brady market has been set by Fox, if Peyton goes, could I have gotten 35? He probably could get 35 from somebody now.
Well, these numbers have all gotten skewed. I have, I'm not going to tell you who they are, but they call each other these famed personalities from sports past and say, do you realize how much we'd be making right now? Do you realize how much they would have to pay us? As First Take, the report is, Stugotz, they're trying to put Russo and Francesa back together.
I love that. I said this right before the new year. There is no way that Russo wants anything to do with that. He does not. He has been looking for something to separate himself from Mike forever.
Chris Russo's having a moment.
He's having a moment, and he does not want Francesa to get in the way of his moment. And I love the dynamic of Francesa now needing Christopher Mad Dog Russo more than Russo needs Francesa. That has to drive Francesa crazy. I hope it does.
Well, what is happening, because it hasn't happened yet, it was something that was reported for a while, and then something delayed it. It was something that
Russo.
You think it was Russo? I don't think Russo has the power. Stephen A. Smith wants. It's his show.
You're right.
Ratings are up. Stephen A. Smith brought Mad Dog Russo out, and Stephen A. Smith respects the original pioneers and is talking about putting them together once a week. Jessica, you made a face, right? No more. We don't need any more approaching 70 broadcasters out there giving us their opinion, hogging all the prime platforms.
I mean, that's what you're saying about my face. I'm not going to go quite that far. It's more so like I don't really watch any of this. I don't get any of my sports talk from like the radio or from First Take or any ESPN programming. Really. Well, I still like Around the Horn. I will say that, but I used to watch it way more than I do now. So I get it all like secondhand through Stugotz, but then like third hand through your reaction to Stugotz's reaction.
Okay, so the reason I wanted to bring all of this up, Stugotz, is because the market is obviously changing everywhere, and at the top end of it, the old white guys, all of them, will get their money. But as Jessica and a whole lot of people listening to this right now, A New Way, are getting their sports information more like they have Twitter, which is, nope, I'm going to go to the menu options that are catered toward me. These podcasts are smarter than the debate television I'm watching. I've told you before, these old journalists who are my age, how they age is going to be interesting, as how they keep up in the TikTok era as new people, new consumers want something different, crave something different. Yesterday, around here, on the televisions, all of which were muted, but all of which have sports on them, I saw Skip Bayless on the television, single camera, talking at me, and I thought he was apologizing for 20 straight minutes because it was silent and it looked somber, and he was in the center of a storm where a lot of people, Bart Scott got this yesterday when he blamed Higgins for the injury. A lot of people are angry and helpless, and they're looking for the people who are saying the wrong thing so they can be mad at someone. And so Bayless and Bart Scott say dumb things and end up getting dragged. But it turns out Shannon Sharpe didn't show up for work yesterday, and I didn't see reported why that was. A lot of people are speculating tension between them, which would be good for television.
Well, right over your shoulder right now, he's back on television. So Shannon Sharpe is back in the seat. Bad timing for, like, in terms of, Skip Bayless had all this stuff happen to him, and then Shannon Sharpe, there might have been a scheduled day off, but even still, like, for him to not be there on that day, just sort of.
But does Skip anytime do that show by himself? Even when they get wouldn't they have time to get a replacement if there wasn't something else at work there?
Usually, yes, but what happened on Sunday night or Monday was so sudden that I'm not certain, because Keyshawn Johnson was also not in yesterday. He's in today. I think if you're a former NFL player, I'm certain your bosses, or if you called your boss and say, hey, I'm rattled, I don't feel like doing this today, I don't want to talk about it, I think they would be understanding. I'm not saying that's the case. I'm saying it's a possibility. That's all.
I don't know what happened. I don't even know what it's fair to speculate. Somebody will report on it. I've heard some people talk about tensions between Shannon and Skip, and I don't know what's contrived and what's for television. Like, Skip Bayless has fully gone professional wrestling character at 70. Like, Stephen A. Smith has gone professional wrestling character at 50 whatever. Colin Cowherd has gone professional wrestling character. Like, it doesn't matter what I say. Let me just get me near a microphone and I'll say a thing and you guys distribute it and it'll be a wrestling promo. That's how it's going to age. As Jessica says, that's not what I want anymore. That's a era of debate television. That was available to me as Kornheiser and Wilbon came up. That's not what this generation is feeding on anymore, I don't think, because First Take is still, for all its success, it's 400,000 viewers a day. It's not that much.
But that's, I think, will be less and less the currency of how it's measured, though. I think it is about who has the tweet or the Instagram post, or like a lot of the consumption of content. And not to be overly look at me Louie, but I just experienced this with the thing I said about Buffalo. Like, Josh Allen did not listen to the podcast and heard me say that. Our social media team put it out there as a clip. The clip got passed around, and that's how, like, athletes can, like, Kevin Durant, I think, thinks that all of sports debate television is people yelling about him because that's what gets clipped and put on social media. There are these infographics where it's a very glossy looking thing of a quote of a big take, someone's name underneath it, and the athlete's photo above it. Like, it's about like feeding that machine. And these sports talk shows, yeah, maybe like not a mass swath of people age 18 to 30 are sitting down and watching FS1 at 9:30 in the morning, but they probably will consume a clip of some sort from one of these shows, and you have to say controversial things in order to be fed into that algorithm.
And how do you feel about that as an evolution, Stugotz? How do you feel? Jessica, I believe that the savviest sports fans are now consuming more sports information than they ever have, more differently than they ever have. Where Jessica has so many, we all have so many options, but she's actively choosing options that are not on television. That are podcasts that are smarter than the average debate show. Like, it seems like that's what you would gravitate to, that things, even if it's just more entertaining, but it's more entertaining because it's smarter.
It makes me sad a bit. Like, I understand why she would do that. I understand why young people would do that. There are more options now than ever. More convenience in finding those options than ever. You find them in your car. You find them on your phone. You can get it, sports takes and TV and whatever you want, wherever you want, at any time that you want. But it makes me sad because I'm a traditionalist, and I do like shows like Mike and the Mad Dog, and I do like getting my information and hearing opinions on sports radio and on sports debate television shows. I don't care how smart they are. I enjoy the entertainment factor of those types of shows. But
she's saying, I would say that most people who aren't watching the argument shows aren't watching it because they don't find it entertaining.
I find them entertaining. I do. Sometimes informative, mostly entertaining.
I think it's such a broad landscape. I think there's room for everybody. There's room for all kind of diversity, and that includes age diversity. I still love doing my podcast. I love that Tony Kornheiser is still very viable in what he does. I love seeing Al Michaels back on the air. I think there's room for that in the bigger picture, and I think consumers want that. I really do. I think we would miss Al Michaels when he's gone, and I think it's great having that along with the younger people who are coming along.
I think I don't think most of America understands yet that there is a generation of people that will never have a cable subscription. Never.
I haven't since I graduated from college.
I only have one because it comes with my apartment's maintenance. Otherwise, I don't think I'd have a cable subscription.
You're missing out.
On what? Watching commercials?
FBI.
The democratization of content will be such that people will get their sports information from a YouTube show. And actually, what I love about the podcast medium is the specificity of it. One of the things that we've talked about sometimes is generalists that are on television don't know as much about your team or even about the sport that you like as people who just dedicate their lives. I was listening to the Low Post on the way in today, and Howard Beck and Zach Lowe literally can't tell you who the quarterback of the Buffalo Bills is. They don't know. They don't care. They just care about basketball.
I've told you this.
And
this
the
is
hour and 10 minutes they give you on basketball are filled with expertise.
Mark Stein can't talk about anything else. We do that pop culture segment with him. In order to be sufficiently expert at talking about this, smarter than most people are talking about it, you have to dedicate yourself to it. You cannot do it across sports. Be a generalist expert.
So listen
everywhere.
to the Dan LeBatard Show with Stugotz, where we try.
Where we try to be an expert about nothing. No single thing.
Did Zach Lowe admit and Howard Beck admit they don't know the Buffalo Bills quarterback? Because I find that impossible to believe.
No, they said Howard Beck said something about the NFL where it's oh no, he said, "Do the Lions still play on Thanksgiving every year?" And I was like, "How do you not know that?" But also in my head, I'm like, "Oh, because you just don't give a shit about football anymore."
Well, you're bragging at that point because you want to appear to have such blinders on for what you're doing that you don't know anything
why can't you
else?
just be? Why can't the NFL? Yes, 26 million people watch it. There's 330 million people in this country. Not everyone watches football.
You think Howard Beck just grew up loving basketball and watching basketball?
No.
Get out of here. He knows that Greg's right. He knows the Lions play on Thanksgiving Day.
I remember
we all do.
When Jimmy Johnson coached the Hurricanes. We used to ask him in the middle of a season, and Jimmy, who do you like in the World Series? And he would smile and claim, "I have no idea bullshit.
Yeah.
I don't care if you're a head coach of a major college or
What?
an NFL team. You know who's
He
playing
was
in the
not
World
lying.
Series.
He did not follow.
You know who's playing
No,
in the World
I
Series.
do love when college football coaches, they're always guilty of this. They'll say like, "Oh, I don't even know what month it is," or some stupid
Exactly.
shit, and it's like, yeah, you do.
Come on.
Yeah.
We know that you're dedicated
So-
to coaching football and you're super serious and you sleep in your office and you've seen your kids once over the last 15 years. But some outside things do seep in, sir.
Right.
Okay, you guys can call them liars. I prefer to just see the macro evolution of the sport where we give all these guys $10 million as leaders and they try to outdumb each other on not knowing what day or month it is. Like they're going to show you how to earn that money. I don't know anything except how to sleep on my couch and make men tougher. That's all I know how to do.
It's not out dumb, they out myopia each other. It's like, I have an even smaller world than you do.
Do the Lions play on Thanksgiving? I don't even know what a lion is.
What is
Seriously.
Thanksgiving? I've never heard of it. A day of sacrifice when I'm not working?
Right.
Fuck you.
I was studying Mississippi State linebacker film.
How do I know who the president of the United States is? I don't follow politics. I'm a football coach.
You know
Come
what
on.
I give thanks for on Thanksgiving being
that
able
they've
to
managed
watch
to figure it
that
out.
film.
Yeah, college football coaches unfortunately do have lots of,
Political thoughts.
knowledge of politics for some reason.
This brings me to Mike Gundy. I wanted to talk about Mike Gundy for a second.
What a segue.
Because there were a couple of segments over the holidays. I saw some reporting beef that made an appearance. Mike Gundy was asked about changes to his coaching staff as Mike Gundy's team does what it always does, which is you're going to win 8 or 9 games, never any of them we remember.
Same season every season.
Every season.
Little 8-0
This-
start. I mean,
This season is the most stark version of it, though. They started at either 5 or 6-1 and finished 7-6.
Oh,
but that second half collapse was epic.
Okay, and Lane Kiffin got a bunch of money and then lost 5 of 6 because none of these guys are actually geniuses.
Alabama's best win, though, according to Stugotz.
that was a good win at the
Put
time.
it on the poll, Roy. Who's stealing more money from Mississippi, Brett Favre or Lane Kiffin? Because Lane Kiffin got that extension and then he immediately started losing games. But Mike Gundy has the arrogance of a man who every year knows he's going to win 8 games, none of them that matter. And he's asked about changes to his coaching staff as he Gundy's up a bowl game. And he says, I'm not going to tell you that. I might have to cut you out, meaning limit access to Oklahoma State football, which feels to me like a blessing, not a punishment.
Thank you.
Yeah, really.
But these coaches, I have found in the media relationship, as we talk about some of this stuff in broadcasting that's changing, and these people really don't need us. I don't believe. They can have their own brand teams, and I don't think athletes need much media anymore beyond their contractual obligations. Over the break, you guys saw, right, that Giovanni Bernard ended up in an incident where a whole lot of people sided with him, his humanity as an athlete in the locker room because there had been a botched punt situation in a Tampa Bay game, and he's trying to leave the locker room, Stugotz. Do you guys know what I'm talking about here?
Yeah.
He's trying to leave the locker room after having screwed up a game, and the exchange with reporters is contentious. And the reporters, you couldn't hear him say, now you guys want to talk to me? But the reporters came after him with, why would we talk to you? You've been injured all year. And it seemed like everyone in social media sided immediately with Giovanni Bernard in a delicate moment in the locker room because of the entitlement of reporters. People really hate reporters, okay? We saw with fake news and everything else, it's one of the most hated professions. If I go around and ask people what's something you hate, media is going to get a lot of it. And so people immediately, zealously in the social media age just sided so quickly with Giovanni Bernard that Jenna Lane, one of the reporters who put out the video for ESPN, her apology, I thought, was way too profuse because of the beating she must have taken from people mad that she would ask Giovanni Bernard a perfectly reasonable question indelicately or felt inhumanely. As he says, can I just get out to my family? Which, of course, saying it that way, no, but Giovanni, you blew the game and you were trying to get out of the locker room without talking to reporters, and contractually, it's part of the deal. Like, you're kind of paid for that access, and while they seemed to be indelicate jerks about it in a sensitive situation, Giovanni Bernard was not maximum professional there. He was trying to sneak out a side door.
Right.
And Greg Cote's always going to side with the entitlement of the reporter. Stugotz is always going to side with the entitlement of the fan. I get to behave this way with the athlete. But I'm curious what you guys made of that exchange, because I thought Jenna Lane, her apology was way too profuse. Like it seemed like she was under a great deal of duress because that moment was something that she gave to the world, and everyone seemed to be siding with Giovanni Bernard.
Well, I generally do agree with the media and the reporter, and I do in this case. However, when you're asking the hardest, toughest questions, you have to do it the softest you can. You have to have tact. Professionally, you can ask whatever you want. You can be as indelicate as you want. But from a human standpoint, you have to have sympathy for these players. They're real human beings. If you're going up to a player after a game who has just muffed a punt that was returned for a touchdown, and he is clearly responsible for his team just losing, you have to go into that sympathetically, not harsh, and you have to treat that player with respect. Like, geez, this has to be one of the lowest moments of your life. I'm sorry I even have to be here asking, but I have to ask.
But what if his initial response is, now you guys want to talk to me, while leaving the room?
Well, you did something that's worthy of us talking to you. Sorry.
Right.
What you've done up until now, good or bad, wasn't worth us asking you any question. You weren't playing. You were injured.
That doesn't need to be said.
Right, exactly. In that moment, how do you say that? Or you really would just say, you were involved in the most important play of the game. We want to get your perspective on it.
And also, we're here after you score a touchdown, too. Remind him about that.
But he also doesn't need to say, now you want to talk to me? Because he knows, he's smart enough. He was out. What was there to talk to him about?
He's an hour removed from the only thing that he did this season that was a disaster.
I know.
From a human standpoint. And also, part of the media game, and Greg can speak to this more than me, is over the course of the year, beat reporters who are there every day are attempting to build relationships to where you can speak to people on a human level. And if no one has made the effort to speak to him on a human level at any point over the first 19 weeks, including preseason and training camp of the year, and all of a sudden you want to come around whenever I make my biggest mistake, you can understand the loss of humanity in that.
It's also getting harder and harder, and Greg can speak to this, but it is getting harder and harder because of the pandemic and teams not wanting you around their players. Access is less valuable. It's more valuable to us than it is to them. Only we have to gain from the access. All Giovanni Bernard gets there is we get our viral moment. He gets his shitty moment. The Tampa Bay Bucks don't want any of that. We're not providing a public service. We're only feeding ourselves with our entitlement there.
But as you pointed out, he has an obligation as an NFL player to go to the podium after the game, and he was trying to go out a side door. I guarantee you, if he scored the winning touchdown, he'd be the first one at the podium. Hey, fire away. Ask me questions.
Right.
I scored the game winner.
And there has to be a mutual respect between reporters and the subjects they're covering.
Does there?
Well, I think it's valuable to the relationship that works for both, if there is.
But what if you're not valuable to the player? What if the reason you exist as a reporter to the player is someone to get that gotcha moment that makes you feel shitty? Like what is deteriorating in the access is the teams and the players and the humans in the middle of this are saying, what do we need this beat reporter here all the time to film this thing? No, we'll bring Josh Allen out. He'll come to the microphone, say nothing, and then walk away, and we will avoid anything. We will give you the illusion of access. It'll just be a few words, and I don't need to help you do your job anymore. I don't need you anymore. I got Amazon Prime. What do I need Greg Cote for anymore?
That's 100% correct. And that's why when Tua Tagovailoa, after throwing 3 fourth-quarter interceptions, shows up and answers every single question and looks you in the eye when he's doing it and could not be kinder in that low moment for him, let alone he may have been concussed when he was doing that post-game access, you respect that. And so you treat him kinder because he treats you kind. Okay? You don't go up to Tua and say, man, you stunk today. What's up with those 3 interceptions? You have to couch it more humanely than that. You just do.
It was an awkward situation. And like you said, the access in the locker room has always been something that I think has been contentious because players want privacy, but there also isn't a forum like that where you're having kind of an intimate one-on-one conversation in the locker room with a player right after a game. And there haven't been a lot of opportunities to build those relationships since COVID because locker room access was banned for the last 2 seasons. This is the first year that it's been back since 2019. So it's a really awkward and uncomfortable situation. And I think like that video was difficult to watch. Like it was difficult to watch both sides of it. I can see how it got out of hand from the reporter standpoint because it immediately got confrontational. And just the nature of doing like a locker room interview is pretty confrontational. You have to go up to the player and basically like ask them questions, demand a reaction from them. And obviously Bernard, I thought he handled it actually pretty well because it was a very difficult situation for him to be in too. But I can kind of see both sides of it and how that spiraled and became very uncomfortable very quickly and how he wouldn't want to have anything to do with those reporters and they maybe didn't give the correct or like the most tactful approach to him given how stressful that situation was.
I think we're headed to, and you guys tell me whether you think this is incorrect or not. I think we will look back at this time and it will feel 20 years from now like reporters traveling by train with players, that they're going to eliminate this access, that Adam Silver, even with the broadcast fees, as long as they get mic'd up for sound and they can get their little contractual illusions of, look, we're near the field, we're on the field, I think we're going to arrive at a day. Silver's already there. His players have told him, like, I'm getting dressed. Do I really need somebody? Do I really need some stranger invasively? And if it's a situation where Draymond Green and Jordan Poole, something is going on after the 10-minute cooling off period, do these millionaires who are at work at their offices, do they really need Greg Cote wandering around the locker room while they get dressed trying to do their jobs?
Ask Greg Cote that.
Well, back in the day, you'd see a bunch of naked players walking around. You don't see that anymore. I mean, that aspect of the job has totally changed.
I don't think that part's changed completely.
Well, that part has changed by my perspective.
Well, has it changed or has it not changed? They're either naked in the locker room.
It was more common. The entire team was naked back when
No.
Greg was doing it.
Generally
Well, now there's more cameras. I think players have gotten like more like used to, I don't want to end up in the background of someone's iPhone camera video. So maybe that has changed a little bit.
Well,
but
also
it is
there's
still like a super, like, you have to be a professional when you're in there and understand that, like, there's guys doing stuff that you maybe, like, don't look that way or ignore, and you just have to navigate it professionally.
Stugotz has a conga line of nude football players in a 1980s, the Killer Bees in an 80s locker room.
Were they all naked?
When was the last time Stugotz was in a locker room?
No, but it's been a while, but Greg was in those locker rooms. Were the Killer Bees all naked?
Back in the 80s and 90s, nudity in post-game locker rooms was common. It is not today, by my perspective. But here's the thing.
What does this mean by my perspective? Why do you have a different perspective on this than Jessica has?
Because I don't mean to contradict her. If she says
you're in the locker room way more than I have been over the last whatever.
But in your few appearances, you've seen a nudity that evidently Cote is now blind to.
My experience is more in line with Greg's, honestly. Like I covered the Heat fairly regularly for 4 or 5 years, and the Dolphins. I've been in all the major South Florida, and I have not seen that many penises, to be honest.
And it used to be way opposite.
What? No, like you don't see nudity very much. You just don't.
You see a bare ass once in a while?
Every once in a while.
And by the way, a 340-pound guard walking nude through a locker room is nothing you want to see. Trust me on that one.
Not true.
Don't body shame.
You know what? Not true. This is not the locker room
That's true.
anymore.
I did body shame him. I'm sorry, unnamed guard.
But on body shaming in general, I think one of the things that people lose sight of with football all the time, because we think we know that sport somehow. No, man. The 340-pound guy is super flexible right now and has an unbelievable scientific body that has been crafted for be the strongest 340 pounds you can be.
I want to see Kuchenberg naked. I'm not going to apologize.
A lot of hair.
See you, Gary.